For this list, I'll be going over dungeon and raid bosses that either have some creepy lore to their backstory, or are themselves just kind of creepy, and a combination of the two. At number 10, we'll start off light with the avatar of Hakkar in the Sunken Temple. The Sunken Temple is a place where trolls tried to bring Hakkar the Blood God back into the world. But the green dragons found out about it, and sunk the temple in the middle of the swamp to try and put a stop to it. But that actually only allowed them to work without being disturbed, as the green dragons also guarded the place so no one could leave or enter. Eventually, the trolls managed to get a few green dragons to sacrifice, and brought about the avatar of Hakkar. What's creepy about this place is that it's an underground temple in the middle of a swamp that is used literally just to sacrifice people and dragons to a blood god. Number 9, the Evergrowth Yalnu. Now, this one needs a little bit of explaining, seeing as it's a green centaur from a dungeon full of plant monsters. You see, the Evergrowth is an incredibly dangerous force on Draenor that nearly destroyed the planet before the Titan Agrimar came to the planet and created the Gron to keep the plant life in check. The human mages, unknowing of the true danger the Evergrowth posed, attempted to set up portal ways in the middle of the Everbloom to give them more strategic portals into Draenor for the war against the Iron Horde. But the Evergrowth has a pollen that can take control of the minds of humanoid creatures, and eventually warp them into hybrid plant monsters, similar to the Undead Curse. And a huge group of mages get mind-controlled by the Evergrowth and help in raising a Genosaur named Yalnu, and opened a portal for it leading directly to Stormwind. Genosaurs in Evergrowth are the top dogs, and basically demigods like Cenarius. They are so incredibly powerful it would take an army to stop a single one. Luckily, there are almost none left on the planet, except for the one that steps through the portal into Stormwind. If not stopped, it could have easily started mind-controlling civilians and started an invasion similar to the Scourge. But it was stopped, and that was the end of it. The Evergrowth were such an incredibly huge potential threat that it's almost a shame Blizzard did nothing else with it outside of this one dungeon. Number 8, Fetid the Devourer. This boss was created by Titans experimenting on several Loas and Gahun's corruption to reanimate expired tissues. But the experiments didn't go well, so the Keepers just destroyed all of the samples. But they didn't do a very good job, and Gahun was able to reanimate all of the destroyed specimens from the experiments into one giant chimera known as Fetid the Devourer. So it's literally just an amalgamation of dead Loas and animals held together by old god corruption. And it's kind of messed up that the Keepers were even doing horrible experiments like this in the first place, if you really stop to think about it. Number 7, the Reliquary of Souls. In the Burning Crusade, people didn't really know why Illidan had a chamber full of suffering souls in the Black Temple, but since he was a bad guy at the time and it was a raid, it wasn't too hard to think of a reason for it, even if nothing was really explained officially in-game. Then, when the Illidan novel came out, many years later, you learn that Illidan used souls to power a lot of the portals he used to fight the Legion, and went to Ockhamdoom to collect all of the Draenei souls to power a potential portal to Argus. He also just killed lots of people and took their souls for later use. So the Reliquary of Souls is literally just a place that Illidan kept all of his souls, like a battery that he could then come back and use later. Number 6, Gore Fiend. Speaking of souls, Gorefiend is a warlock who ate so many Draenei souls that he turned into a bloated abomination. During his fight, he spits out souls and even tries to eat yours, and you have to fight your way out of his stomach. Even if you die from other means in the fight, he'll steal your soul, and you'll end up in his stomach, instead of staying dead. Number 5, Raal the Gluttonous. This boss in the Waycrest Manor is like a pig monster thing that feeds players parts of his flesh as part of his fight, and also has a phase where he calls servants to feed him, but instead of taking the food he just eats the servants themselves to restore his health. Honestly, not too much lore on this guy. His dungeon journal basically says he was the main chef for the Waycrests, and then since they are pretty messed up people, they probably just did some kind of witch magic on him to turn him into a creepy monster. This boss looks straight out of a horror movie, and has abilities and mechanics that just make him even more creepy, giving him a perfect spot on this list. Number 4. The Old Gods, specifically Yogg-Saron, Cthulhu, and G'huun. Rather than let them take 3 separate spots on the list, I thought to instead combine them all into one, as I'm sure most people would expect them to make the list anyway. Yogg-Saron's fight takes place at the bottom of a Titan research facility, and half the fight is about trying to not go insane from just looking at him.
Look upon the true face of death, and know that your end comes soon.
Cthulhu, in a very similar vein, is constantly whispering things to you and has a phase where he eats you, and you have to try to not be dissolved by his stomach acid.
Your friends will abandon you.
And G'huun, the newest bad boy on the market, looks like a giant parasite stuck in the wall until it bursts out like a slug, and has one of the creepiest character models to date.
Your species exists to feed my growth.
I think of all of the old gods, G'huun is definitely the creepiest looking, but all 3 old gods easily make the list anyway.
You will die.
Number 3. The Escape from Arthas. In the final fight in the Halls of Reflection dungeon, Jaina or Sylvanas fails in killing the Lich King, and you have no chance at beating him. So the only course of action is to literally just run away as fast as possible. But the Lich King gives chase, and sends up ice walls to block your path, and his minions to slow you down, all while he just slowly walks towards you. While Sylvanas works at breaking the ice wall, you're left to kill the minions, and if you're not quick enough, the Lich King will catch up and instantly kill you. This fight is great from a thematic point of view. You're facing down an entity so powerful that all you can do is run away, and even that is proving to be difficult. And unlike other timed encounters, you can actually see the countdown walking towards you. This fight isn't really creepy in the traditional sense of the word, and could be better described as ominous. It's a very well pulled off feeling that can legitimately scare and pressure you as you try to kill the ads as quickly as possible, and I think that gives it a high spot on this list. Number 2. Dr. Theolen Krastinov, the Butcher of Skulloments. Now, technically, this guy wasn't a boss, and more of a rare elite inside the dungeon, but I don't think that matters too much. You see, the Butcher was involved in a quest in Vanilla WoW, where you needed to kill him and then burn the body parts of the 2 ghosts outside so that they could pass on in peace. The undead surrounded us, constantly tormenting us with horrifying acts of depravity. Finally, he came. He introduced himself as Dr. Theolen Krastinov. We came to know him as the Butcher. We finally understood what the screams were from. The Butcher exposed us to pain that we did not know existed. He used us in countless experiments to devise a plague. The days turned to weeks. We would have died on the first day had it not been for the cruel bastard keeping us alive through magical means. We feel nothing. Our souls remain here, in limbo. We are unable to leave until our remains are found and spirits laid to rest. Now, if you don't know the lore of Skulloments, basically it was a place owned by the Barra family, and they sold it off to a necromancer in exchange for a promise of immortality. And the necromancer just turned it into a school for other necromancers, where they performed all kinds of terrible experiments on the people of the nearby town. And that's why it's the only town in-game with exclusively ghostly residents. And Dr. Thielen was the main torturer. And now, number 1, Thaddeus. Thaddeus is a flesh golem created by using the flesh of women and children captured by the Scourge war machine, fusing them all together, body and soul, into a giant abomination. When entering his room, you can hear the echoes of women used to create him. And when you do finally kill him, he thanks you for finally putting it out of its misery.
Thank you.
As you can probably tell from Dr. Theolen and Thaddeus, the Scourge in Vanilla WoW was way more evil and creepy than they were later on in WoW story. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like the Scourge still didn't do messed up things as time went on. They just toned down the killing, torture, and flesh manipulation of women and children, and kind of only regulated that kind of stuff to adult men. Which is to say, it still kind of stayed messed up, all the way until the very end.